All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get going. We have a lot to discuss today. So welcome to our panel today on the unified commerce experience. We're going to speak with the co-CEO of Journelle, who has worked with NetSuite as the unified commerce tool set, and just learn about their journey, how they used it, some of the, the great things that happened, some things they've learned along the way. Just a little bit of housekeeping. If you do have any questions as we go along, just go ahead and add them to the chat in Zoom. If we have enough time, we'll definitely get to them. If we don't, we'll make sure that we copy them down before we end the Zoom, respond to them directly to you if there, anything that we need to do that we don't get to. So from that, we're just going to dive on in. So here today, you're talking to myself, Victoria Markley. Nice to meet you all. Guido Campello, sorry. He's the co-CEO. He makes sure his wife is the other co, so we need to make sure that's noted. And then we have Craig from NetSuite, and they're going to go into their backgrounds a little bit here in a bit. So before that, let me just, for folks that are not familiar with Fit4Commerce, I guess most of you probably are, but if you're not, we work with brands, retailers, B2B organizations, service providers, retailers, pretty much anyone in the digital ecosystem, developing unique business strategies and experiences for marketing, operations, IT, pretty much anything that encompasses the digital ecosystem. We use both current and future dynamics with that, kind of giving a phased approach that's really earned and evolves over time to make sure, as we learned today, have to be pretty nimble in today's environment. So that's what Fit4Commerce is. And I'll move it over to Journelle and Guido to tell us a little bit about yourself as well as Journelle.
Hi, well, I guess it's good afternoon, right? Feels like a morning for some reason. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me. Journelle is a now almost 15-year-old brand that my wife and I acquired last year. It is a brand and retailer. Started off with one retail store in New York, now has 3 in New York, 1 in Chicago, and we are close to West Coast now also. So we've transitioned and turned a company that actually had been acquired a couple times before. And this was really our first foray working and tying into NetSuite Oracle. So we learned quite a bit in these last 2 years.
Great. Thank you so much, sir. And Craig, tell us a little bit about yourself as well as just the Oracle NetSuite unified experience.
Sure. Hello, I'm Craig Harris. I'm the industry principal and the solution principal for Oracle NetSuite, and I work principally with apparel brands throughout North America. Oracle is a global company, and it's a cloud-based ERP system that is the first cloud ERP, the largest cloud ERP, and the leading cloud ERP on the market. We were born in the cloud. We've always operated in the cloud. So we've sort of helped define what the industry is all about. We are a global business unit, and we cover, as you can see, we have customers in over 200 countries. We are experiencing record growth, and we were typically, and as you can see here, we added 4,500 new customers in the last 12 months, and that growth trajectory is expected to continue. We have more than 24,000 customers worldwide, thousands of customers in North America, and hundreds of apparel brands represented in that overall suite. Thank you, and nice to meet you all today.
Awesome. Thanks, Craig. And I think we're going to learn a little bit today about, why your trajectory is the way it is and what's happening in the ecosystem today. So thank you so much for that. Right. So I don't think this is a surprise to anybody, but it just kind of sets the tone a little bit is, the e-commerce is an exponential growth compared to just retail sales. And I think, no one can deny what's happened in the last 12 months and how, the digital transformation was the buzzword 5-10 years ago. It seemed, maybe it is 10 years ago. God, it doesn't seem like that. But, for folks that weren't on that bandwagon back when that was all happening, I think this is kind of the indicator that you don't have any choice at this point. You have to be able to have a strong ecosystem that's going to enable a nimble e-commerce digital landscape that you can move as things are going to happen. Because I think the pandemic in the past 12 months has certainly brought things that we weren't expecting. And I think we're going to continue to see things just get shooken up and, for the near future. So just kind of sets the tone a little bit about the numbers. And if you haven't seen this, dramatic number, I think this is very telling of where we are. And what we're here to talk about today is what, my experience, I've been in this industry for about 20 years in the digital landscape, working for systems integrators and consultancies. And what I thought was really interesting when, we were talking about this webinar is that, 10, 15, 20 years ago, all of my clients were, we wanted one system, one throat to choke, if you that way, or the better way is, one back to pat. But, just put all your eggs in one basket. Let's have one thing. And it really felt like about, 10 years ago, there was an evolution where everybody went to best of breed and, let's break it up. Let's have a ridiculous amount of technologies that are all integrated to each other. It wasn't really cohesive. It was, kind of a mess of, if you looked at the overall, enterprise architecture diagram, it was a mess. And what I'm seeing now is that everyone's evolving back to that more unified approach. And I think maybe before, the 20 years ago, we didn't have the cloud, we didn't have, the architecture to support that, or maybe that's where the, putting a bunch of smaller technologies together really worked. But now everyone, it seems to be really going to, can I get, one technology that's going to do a lot of stuff that I don't have to have a bunch of integrations. It's all just going to be there. So that's really what we're here to talk about today is, that now here's where we are, here's what people are looking for, and what does that really mean? How can it benefit you? And then obviously we're going to learn a lot from Guido and, Journelle and how it's really changed dramatically, their experiences. So I'm going to sort of, hey, Craig, can you talk to us a little bit about, just the unified platform? We've talked a little bit about, the visibility, orchestration, flexibility. Can you talk a little bit about, your experience around that unified platform and these three, pillars and why it really matters?
Yeah, sure, Victoria. I think the sort of the three pillars of a unified platform almost speak for themselves, but in our modern world of commerce, omni-channel capabilities are at the forefront, and that necessarily involves visibility of inventory across all channels, across all locations, not only being able to see what I have on hand, but also what's in my supply chain, and then to be able to accurately report on that. It is a critical component. If I'm trying to fulfill an order from the store and I don't have accurate visibility of the inventory into that store, it's going to lead to missed or unfilled orders and a decline of customer satisfaction. Around that visibility is the orchestration of order fulfillment. So making sure that the business processes are aligned with the IT and that orders flow quickly and smoothly through the system and get to the proper fulfillment locations, and that we're keeping our fingers on the pulse of all of that operation so that if something goes awry, we can quickly correct that and move on. And again, also ultimately driving customer satisfaction and increased revenue as associated with that. The last pillar is incredibly important to understand. Flexibility. If you think about business, the one constant in business is change. And the way we operated 1 year ago is drastically different than the way we operate today. And who knows what the next 2 years are going to bring us. We know it will be different than it is today. So if business never changed, and we really would never need to change an IT system once we get it right, you just walk away from it. We're done with that. We can go do something else now. But unfortunately, or fortunately, that is not the case. Business changes every day. Our competitors and the marketplace drives change. So having the ability to flex, to add new channels, to add new countries, to add new regions in your business, to change the way orders are fulfilled, going from distribution center fulfillment to stores fulfillment. All of those kind of things illustrate that it's incredibly important to have a platform that can flex with your business and grow with your business as time goes on.
Great. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. And, kind of what should a retailer look for in commerce if, Craig, maybe you can continue that, train of thought you were going on, and just why should they consider unified? You've obviously just gone through those three pillars, which is really important, but maybe just talk a little bit about the benefits from your perspective.
Sure, and you'll see that those three pillars align to this graphic that we're looking at nicely. So I'll take the upper left one, data integrity. That means one source of the truth. So for those brands running NetSuite, for example, anything they need to know about their operation, they can get out of that platform. Doesn't matter if it's supply related, financial related, item information, customer information, it's all in one place. And I'm going to illustrate this with a very quick situation that I would bet every single one of us on this call have experienced. We're in a meeting and we're discussing some event or some trend in our business, and somebody makes a declaration, we're up 3%, or this is X number of issues that we're having, and someone else in the room goes, where did you get that information? Because my information's different. And when you have a disparate number of solutions in your organization and people pulling data from all those different places, you end up arguing over the source of the data as opposed to discussing the problem that the data is trying to illustrate. So I can't emphasize that enough. One source of the truth has a tremendous business value because it allows your team to focus on the problems and resolutions to those problems, and planning for the future as opposed to arguing over where we got our information. The rest of this is around, I already explained the flexibility point. As business changes, you need to understand that your system or your systems can flex with the business requirements, that you have not just visibility, but real-time omni-channel visibility. So you can tell what's going on in all your fulfillment locations, and you can see the status of all the orders. This will drive a reduction of manual processes. A common theme that we hear is that businesses start out with a few systems, and then you have a lot of manual labor to connect those systems together. I kind of joke and say your system integration is a person, and that person can only type so fast. So as businesses grow, you get to the situation where you simply cannot hire people fast enough to keep up with all the typing, and you have to come up with a much more cohesive and integrated solution. That's what we're talking about today. So the automation and personalization, making the system do what you need it to do as opposed to what the business down the street needs it to do. Incredibly important. The last one I'll talk about is, a cohesive view of your customer. What have they bought from us? What does their value represent to our organization? What are their preferences? What are their sizes? All those kinds of things, being able to have that, and then also have a historical visibility of every order that you've ever tendered with that customer over time. So you have just an incredible wealth of direct customer information that you would otherwise perhaps go missing with. And all of this really drives improved margins and profitability, and we'll get a little bit more into that later.
Yeah, and the 360 view of the customer, I think at this point, everyone talks about personalization, and we really do have to understand who the customer is so we can give them a, personalized or, an experience when they enter those websites. So that one's very important. The reduced manual processes, this one, I just touch on it for a second. I've had so many clients that, the amount of manual process they have to process an order. I had one client that literally 80% of the orders that somebody touched it before it got fulfilled, just reviewing for fraud, whatever. So reducing that manual processes, just right there, the amount of operational efficiencies you gain, not only, margin, talk about your margins right there. So I think that's a really, really big one as well. So thank you so much. Guido, time for you to get on the hot seat, sir. So let's talk about Journelle a little bit and your experience. So if I understand correctly, Journelle started with an ERP, that your digital journey, you started with the ERP. So talk to us a little bit about just the overview of Journelle, how you got started from the technology perspective, and talk to us a little bit about that to kind of set the stake before we continue moving on.
Sure. Well, first of all, ops and back-end IT, all of that stuff is not my forte. It really wasn't. So I've gone through, a college of sorts in the last 2 years. And I will tell you that the day that we closed and acquired Journelle, I held my head in my hands and I was like, oh no, what did I do? And fortunately, in my previous experiences, I had some great IT support and help, and actually, that team was able to jump in. But what was even cooler is the team that was already there, we were able to find through the ranks so many people who understood this program even better than the admin team that was currently running the company. And we ended up pretty much changing. We flipped the company and we're able to make the changes. So our leader and really let's say our savant with the system really came from one of the lower admin levels of our stores, and now is helping to lead the company organization. So it was Journelle was a retailer that went through a lot of transitions, and it launched before the last big recession in 2008. It launched in 2007. And it encountered some difficulties and changed hands 3 times before it got to us. So we're the 4th owner. And what we were able to inherit, besides a beautiful history of brands and everything, was really the true history. We were able to see everything, and we still can, thanks to the fact that the backend never changed and the NetSuite ERP really hung out there. There were also great adjustments that they had already done. We're learning now through some of our evolution how many scripts were written and personalizations, et cetera, to be able to get things going. However, we're also realizing how much of that is outdated, much to what Craig was talking about, where the efficiency of bringing everything into one, you realize that personalization is great, but it's also horrible, right? It's also something really bad, because updating that constantly with all the new updates that technology is going to continue bringing traps you, and it ends up costing a lot of money. And we definitely, in this audit process we've done the last 2 years, we spent a lot trying to clean that up, and we're in that process now. How do you simplify? So what we found ourselves doing was being able to visualize a vertical company where Journelle was a retailer and simply a retailer, and now it's actually a producer. We actually go all the way from the fiber and can produce all the way up. And in order to do that, with multiple vendors and consumptions, and what we call PLM, which allows us to follow all our product lifecycle, we needed a system that was really all tied together. And it was one of the first things I learned about Oracle NetSuite, was that, wait a second, we can have these in a suite. And then we learned, why are we doing HR separately? There's the HR suite, and all these things kind of started coming in that the previous owners hadn't pulled in together. So we were able to apply those while going through a transition, while recovering from a very stressed situation, and then going through COVID and our store closures, which closed for half the year last year. And that was the bloodline of this brand and this business, was the stores. And we were able to transition within a week to being an omni-channel retailer and building our .com business to take from all our stores. And that's what made us survive. But being able to pull all these things together all at the same time with everything going on, I think showcases the versatility that we can do with Oracle NetSuite, even without the personalizations. I think there's still a lot of really great things that are really thought out that we can adjust our processes towards. And I think that's part of what we're looking for, is we are looking for ease of use, where maybe there's processes that we had that maybe need to come back and take a look, or be re-looked at based on the suites that are offered. I will say one thing, I do come from a family business that's in the same category that has a tech stack, right? It's a 40-year-old business, turns 40 next year, and in a way is a bit opposite from Journelle, because it has exactly that. It has 30 different partners we use for everything that we do in a fully vertical company. And we have tried and discussed bringing it over even into this environment at Oracle NetSuite. And the challenge is the personalizations, right? And how do you change processes that have been ingrained in a company to really be able to come into something that's already been rethought or fluid? So I'm getting to see both sides of that now.
Okay, that's awesome. And Craig, so that was kind of how Journelle, their journey. Are most of your clients starting with an ERP, or are they starting with other pieces of NetSuite? What did you typically?
Yeah, sure. We actually see both paradigms. So we work with literally hundreds and hundreds of established businesses that already have a tech stack and are looking to improve their business. And this often comes from what we refer to as a hairball of point solutions, all of which might be quite capable best of breed solutions in and of themselves, but don't bolt together well. So they suffer from the lack of those 3 pillars that I talk about. They don't have the visibility, they don't have the flexibility, and they don't have the real-time nature of their IT stack in order to be able to run their business efficiently. They want to improve that. We also see new businesses. Typically, these will be businesses that have aspirations for IPOs and rapid growth, may have investment money behind them, and they will often select NetSuite in a pre-revenue mode before they even tender their first transaction with a real live customer. So we see both of those paradigms. The key focus for anyone making a transition from a legacy environment into NetSuite is sort of 5 key things that we want in this unified model. You want all your customers, your items, their item records and all the attributes that go with that, inventory, orders, and financials, all on that core platform. And that really constitutes the foundation of ERP. And typically what we would advise these customers who are looking at a transition into NetSuite ERP is don't try to boil the ocean. So we have a very solid business methodology we call Suite Success that allows a brand to move on to ERP, but do so in a graduated stair-step fashion so that you're not trying to solve for all problems in the business all at once. But at that core, those 5 things, items, inventory, orders, customers, and financials, once you get that all on one platform, you start almost immediately getting an ROI on the system. So it's a sort of a bite small, chew fast notion that we want to start getting value out of our ERP implementation as soon as possible. And it's by solidifying on that foundation that allows us to do that. Then we can iterate and build on success, just like Guido talked about. We can add HR, we can add e-commerce, which is likely already in place anyway. We could add point of sale. We can add channels, we can move into new countries, etc. That's where we really start to reap benefits out of the platform. But even just getting those 5 basic functions working in the ERP has almost immediate ROI. I think you might be muted.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome.
We're not hearing anything.
Guido, can you hear me?
I can now. I think there's just some internet waviness there, some Wi-Fi maybe.
Can you kind of talk to us a little bit about the streamlined capabilities, the expansion of business, what you experienced as you were kind of growing Journelle?
We experienced everything in terms of all these needs somewhat from scratch. I would say the benefit again of having a system like this that's tied into so many facets of your business is you can pivot very quickly. And you can tie in or learn about other programs that are out there that can plug and play very well. We happen to not be on the e-commerce space with NetSuite, but the integrations and everything that's tied together, has been very strong. However, we're looking at how can we evolve, how can we make that an even smoother tie-in? Because every time there is an update on one, checking the update on the other, or sometimes they're happening at similar times. Very hard for a smaller business like us to keep dedicating time to making sure that from one day to the other you're not going down. And we have seen that in the past, not with Journelle, but in other businesses where suddenly our site didn't work for 2 days, and obviously you can't have a store that's just closed when everybody's walking by. So the way that tech ties together and marries together is increasingly our focus, reducing the middlemen, reducing that tech stack, seeing what is there for us to use. But one aspect that I tell a lot of people about that's so great about what we have here on Oracle NetSuite is we have the potential to open up other brands and create other silos. And we are now activating and in the process of setting up our One World, which will allow us to have different businesses function in the exact same way under the umbrella of this ERP account, right? So we are not limited when we're thinking, hey, can I start another brand? Can I segment out a business completely to see if I can create a valuation for it and eventually drive that to be something that can raise on its own and be accounted on its own, have different partners. I'm now able to break all these things up. So we're seeing segments in the business that open up. For example, there's really strong trend in maternity this year. So it's great that Journelle should do maternity, but should we break out a whole segment to that and there create, kind of these incubators where I could create another brand and create a valuation since it's already in my wheelhouse? Well, this whole system allows me to do that very simply because I can just separate it out and track it and follow it, create those financials, give it its own warehouse. Even if it's in the same location or in similar locations across my store, it's still treated as its own element. I have separate partners again. And it's allowed me to do that 4 times in the past year. So we have 4 new companies, 4 new brands since January last year. And we started those in anticipation of the One World building and launching. And that's the process we're in right now, where each of these will actually come to market and launch. Without having that kind of tech to support a group growth mentality for us, I wouldn't have been able to do those 4. So you're going to have 4 new stories on the market that could be properly their own brands and companies that wouldn't have been there had we not had that right tech. So we're looking for that, right? What's the tech that helps us progress and be, bigger thinking when we think about, our existing business and how we can break it out and create more value.
Yeah, and it's interesting with the past in the pandemic, how you guys have expanded so quickly, and having this unified capabilities allowing you to do so is pretty great. Craig, turn it over to you for a second. Is this a unique experience, or how are you seeing other clients using this unified platform to support the business and the changes that are happening today?
Oh, it's certainly not unique, and but the emphasis, for example, on omnichannel has only increased dramatically as a result of the last 12 months. For all the reasons that we know, our stores were closed for retail traffic, so we wanted to turn them into fulfillment centers. That's a perfect challenge that many businesses were not equipped to quickly shift their retail model. It's a perfect example. There's lots of other business needs that will drive either a selection of an ERP or to leverage the capabilities that are already in the ERP. I want to add channels to my business. I want to expand into new countries, those things that I've already talked about. And then there's a core set of business problems that we solved along the way that are typically the real thorns in many businesses' side. And I'll pick one of them, that inventory visibility problem I talked about. That manifests itself in costing our businesses real dollars. And I'll give you a quick example. I don't have a solid sense of the exact inventory in my store location. So how do I handle that when I get down to 1 or 2 units left? It's very simple. I build in safety stock. Now, because I don't have adequate visibility across my organization, I'm building in safety stock in every fulfillment location everywhere. And this leads to a lot of excess money, excess inventory sitting on a shelf that's tying up our capital that could be used to make an acquisition for that next business brand that we might be trying to bring into our business. So by having the visibility into our inventory, we can dial back our on-hand inventory to serve just the needs that we need, sort of a just-in-time approach, as long as we've made sure that we have very clear visibility up in the supply chain. This has a direct result on things like full price sell-through, so we're not having to discontinue and mark down unsold inventory at the end of the year in preparation for the new season. So not only am I reducing my inventory holding costs and freeing up capital to do other things for my business, but I'm also increasing customer satisfaction. I'm driving higher price sell-through. I'm driving better fulfillment rates on my orders. My customers are happy. My margins go up because I'm not having to overbuy and then mark down. I'm not running out of inventory right in the middle of my peak season, so I'm not experiencing the lost sales that I might have had before. So there can be some dramatic improvements, again, just over that unified business model that gets solved and then allows the company to have more money to do other things with the business and grow it in other ways that we've already talked about.
All right.
I would love to second that, because good tech is a source of cash flow, right? So if you're getting that efficiency, if you're maximizing that efficiency and you're able to tack in we found elements of cash flow that simply, again, because of this reason, we were able to go use that in another way. And we weren't lending, we've been able to transition out of that because of those efficiencies. So I definitely see it as one of the byproducts of this good tech is cash flow, for sure.
And I would add just one quick follow-on point to that. Thanks, Guido. A very smart guy pointed this out to me one day. We were standing in a warehouse looking at racks and rows of products. And he said, "What do you see?" And I said, "Well, I see stacks and rows of products." He said, "You know what I see? I see dollar bills stacked up in piles sitting on those shelves, and I can't touch that money, and it drives me insane." And that was an eye-opener for me to understand the true value of inventory is that it is literally cash locked up on the shelf. And the only way we realize benefit from that cash is to sell it to somebody at the best price possible. So it really helps me always ground it back to the business principles that we all know operate, and we're just having better tools now to orchestrate running that business.
If I can, just one point there too, is how it ties into the ERP, into the CRM systems, right? And how we're able to service our clients down to the micro. We are a direct-to-consumer brand, and the visibility I have at all times on every single customer that shops, and anyone can, right, within our team, allows us to really utilize that inventory and really push things. So if we needed to get certain things moving, we know exactly who to pinpoint and who to do that with. And our other system just doesn't do this for us. We've got too many pieces, right, in our other company. This one, I can ask immediately. In fact, even this morning, we were able to turn some exactly like that.
Well, and Guido, so you guys are talking about inventory a little bit, and Craig kind of started us off around the challenges of inventory in general and the importance of that. Obviously, with you guys having a couple of direct-to-consumer stores in New York and Chicago, and sounds like the West Coast coming up, how has NetSuite helped you, or what's been your experience, specifically just around inventory, and how has it enabled you guys to do stuff that maybe you couldn't have done before? I know you talked about it a little bit. Maybe you can expand on that.
This company had a warehouse when we acquired it. It no longer has a warehouse. We do keep a lot of back stock in the storage space, right, or the basements of the stores, and we service out of there now. But what we realized is we need really good presentation and all our size present at all time in our stores. We sell bras. You can't have somebody come in and not have that one size for them. So you can only imagine the weight of that inventory at each store and what it means. If those aren't activated to also sell digitally, you are losing, probably 70-80% of your traffic, right? It's like if you closed the door and only opened it for an hour a day at that point. So we were able to turn on and literally flip a switch. And for some reason, it just wasn't done before we got there, and it wasn't done before COVID. I lost 6 months of that efficiency. We realized when we really had to, we're like, oh my God, what do we do? And they're like, wait a second, there's already something here. Let's make that happen. So the thought process now go forward is, why do we open a store? We're going to open it somewhere where we have issues shipping there. So for example, the West Coast takes a long time, especially right now. Everything's delayed. If we can open a store there, stock it well, now I can ship from there to the West Coast, and it's pretty much overnight shipping. So we are going to do what some major retailers and mass retailers have been doing so well, the Targets of the world. We're going to do it, but at a small scale, at a very personal scale. And the truth is, underwear and the product that we carry are either gifts or very important anniversaries or immediate solutions that people need for events or anything, and they need to get there timely. So we have that responsibility to look at how we warehouse and how we can position geographically to best serve the customer that way. And that's why if a Journelle store opens, it's because it's supporting this kind of network now, right? So we're thinking very differently. And again, NetSuite lets us do it.
Yeah, that's really cool. Because you're right, like those big box retailers, this is the strategies they've using, but actually seeing it at a smaller boutique scale, I think is really compelling to, because a lot of I think that's, the smaller boutiques are what's popping up all over the place now. People want to go direct to a brand, and actually having a story that shows that you can do this and here's how to do it, I think is awesome. And having the technology that enables you to do that. When you first, we got rid of a warehouse, like what, but it makes sense to do so, especially with your line. So that's very, very cool.
Yeah, we're seeing, you see a lot of landlord support now too for a lot of the smaller boutiques that want to expand or would like to. It is a moment where if you've got that technology, it's an opportunity for you to test things, right? So that's where we are.
Awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit about the pandemic and just, what surprises did you guys have? How did NetSuite allow you to adapt to things? Obviously, what surprises everybody was surprised, I think, every day. But, is there anything specific, that you can talk to specifically about your guys' journey?
I think the team, right? So everyone's facing this great conversation now, work from home, come in the office, team culture, team building. And the biggest concern I had was, okay, March 22nd, we're closed in New York. We're supposed to be closed for 2 weeks. Does everyone go on vacation? Absolutely not, because we're able to access all of our stuff from everywhere. So while I think some of our friends who are in other businesses were like, oh, we're going to take 2 weeks off, this is great. We hustled from day one. And the team, no matter where they were and no matter where they are, were able to access and do their role and start reacting and moving. So that was something that I learned the importance of cloud, right? That was something where when you don't have to trouble with VPNs and servers and all these kind of things that older companies do, like, our other family company, this was something that allowed us to let's say knee jerk a lot quicker. So the team stayed together, it stayed cohesive. People grew. People actually had time to start doing cross training. So that's what we actually did. While things were a little slower the first month and a half, we decided to use our hours that we had with NetSuite to leverage them to cross train the whole team in pretty much different departments. So we didn't know who's gonna be able to stay full time, part time. How are we going to shift this around? So everybody became smarter, and it became a hub for learning. It became a hub for communication, and it really allowed us to continue working fluidly. Again, if people say, we closed for COVID, and I honestly struggle to feel that besides the stores having had the lights off, right? Because we really didn't stop.
So this sounds like the Cinderella story and everything went great. Now, there have been some challenges you guys have had. So
Yeah.
maybe before we move on, let's talk about, some of the stuff that maybe didn't go as swimmingly as you would have expected.
Sure. I get very excited when I see the potential for something that's all tied together and integrated as one. And then you realize that things just can't be that simple, right? Especially when you've got, different requests. And we are fully vertical to the fiber, like I said. So we produce our own. We have to order from ourselves. We have to maintain our raw materials, our finished inventory, all these different warehouses. And the ideal set would be that I can order from myself. Consumptions can be taken on the raw material side. I can reorder those. And there's still a lot of complications there. So when we went and jumped into the One World experience, we realized, wow, this actually is going to need a lot of development work and development time, but not just from our side, but also on NetSuite's side. And I think one of the things that, I keep discussing, just had another phone call right before this one about how difficult the talent pool also can be. So organizations that have that talent pool, those are the people who you want to work with and be able to develop forward, because you end up falling behind on schedule and on calendar in things that frankly you can't control. I can control 90% of my business maybe, but when it comes to technology, you really can't control too much of it. If you're looking for specific development, you don't have an in-house development team of engineers like we don't. So I would say that the biggest challenge we had was seeing everybody grow at the same time, technology grow, technology companies grow, and are the resources there? Can we get as fast as we need it? And I think that was the biggest challenge. Would I have loved to have One World today, right now? Yes, I have some pretty awesome orders to put into the system siloed. Instead, I still have to, crowd through it. But again, it's because of, everybody jumping on to the same kind of opportunity right now and this kind of vision set. But it's the new reality. You're going to have to compete for space, compete for partnership, even with your providers and vendors. And I think tech falls into that. So that's a challenge right now for sure. That's been difficult.
Yeah, and I think I keep reading more and more. And even this morning, I read something in the Wall Street Journal that IT spending is expected to be almost 9% up. So everyone's focusing on investing in their technologies. So, and obviously because of what's happening yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and getting those people who can do it well as well. I've worked with a lot of partners in the past that, they could do the work, but it wasn't done great. There were some quality issues or just took a really long time. So finding those really strong partners that are, high quality, can get the job done. That's going to be hard to get in there, prioritized in their stream. So that's a great challenge to bring up, I think, for people joining us. Craig, let me turn it back over to you for a bit. And, we've heard some amazing, great things that Guido and the Journelle team's done. Here's a little bit of some challenges. What are some other challenges that your other retail clients are facing, and how does the unified experience benefiting that situation?
So with respect to the pandemic, the things that we saw happening in real time, and I would add one thing as a footnote, I believe that Journelle was able to shift very quickly in March to ship from store model in a matter of days, not weeks or months. And I'm going to use that to illustrate a point. What we were seeing is big wholesale customers canceling their orders. So the Macy's, the Neiman's, and companies like that were canceling their orders into their suppliers, our NetSuite customers. Shipping was impacted, if not completely crippled. Suppliers were either canceling their orders or businesses were canceling those supply orders because they had nowhere to put the product. And worse for retailers is their businesses were shut down in many states. And this is going to illustrate a problem. In many cases, that was dark inventory. The lights were out. Unless they sent a truck over there and moved the inventory out with a hand truck and took it somewhere else, they couldn't do anything with it. And so again, that's just money sitting in the store collecting dust. So the ability to pivot quickly was a key differentiator between the success and the less successful businesses throughout this period. So we talked about a couple of them, but think about Target, Best Buy, and Amazon. These companies invest tens of millions of dollars in their technology stack to not just keep current, but to stay out on the front edge of what everybody else is doing. And guess what? It was no surprise as the e-com spike kicked in, those companies have flourished. They have done incredibly well. Their sales were up year over year. You would look at their numbers and you wouldn't even know there was a pandemic. They're making money and they're thriving. Compare that to some of the other businesses, and I'm not going to name names, but in the top 500 retail businesses out there, I think we all know who they were. They were businesses that had been struggling, that had not made the investment in their technology stack. So when that business of old model stopped working for them, they had no flexibility. They had no way to react. They didn't have the new modern technology stack that allowed them to change easily. So they were doing very manual yeah, we still fill an order, but I've got a guy sitting there in the store who's answering emails and filling orders that way. Some very, from our perspective, primitive ways of reacting, as opposed to having a technology stack that allowed a quick pivot. Now, again, those big, enterprise grade global giants, they have to spend tens of millions of dollars. And if we were talking 5 to 10 years ago, those capabilities were not really available down market. You simply had to invent the technology as you went. Those days are gone. We have all those same capabilities, and we empower businesses that are much smaller with a much lower IT spend and literally with no IT staff at all to be able to orchestrate the same kind of business change and business process through their system. And this in turn allows companies like Journelle to react to a major disruption in business and still thrive and prosper by being able to quickly adapt. Oh, we can't sell in our stores, but look, e-com is up and people are buying through e-com, and quickly making that change. Not just saying, oh, it'd be great if by September we can make this change. No, this happened in a matter of days or weeks. So that ability to shift was the single biggest predictor of business success throughout this period. And while that is a major disruption, I'm sure we'll all be talking about it for the rest of our lives. If you think about it, business changes every day, as I've already called attention to. And while those changes are smaller, when you take them in total, 5 years from now, our businesses are going to look very differently. And if we're not investing in the technology stack of the future, we're not doing our own business future, a justifiable service. You have to stay current on the technology.
Yeah, I think the theme today that I've heard is you quick pivot. I think being able to do those quick pivots, and something you said earlier, I've never heard it phrased this way, but bite small, chew fast. I absolutely love that. Like usually it's the crawl, walk, run, but I'm going to steal that from you. I love that. So, having the ability to the bite small, chew fast, and have those quick pivots really is the key. And I think that was probably always going to happen as we evolved. I think the pandemic maybe just made it happen much faster. And now this is, I hate this to
Yeah.
say this, but it's the new normal. Like we have to be prepared to pivot on a dime because we're used to change now. So, all right.
Well,
So
I
let's
think
talk.
if our competitors can flip on a dime, if we can't also flip on a dime, we're at a disadvantage. It really is that simple.
Absolutely. And your competitors and also like the clients you support, like enabling them to be able to pivot on a dime is critical for you guys.
That's correct. That's correct.
So Guido, what's next for you guys? So it sounds like you're taking over the world, one store at a time. What's next for you guys?
Not yet, but we're going to keep being very creative. I think the consumer, we spend a lot of times on our phone. We've spent a lot of times looking at our four walls. We spent a lot of time, perusing and binging on content in our television. So I think there's, we're already seeing it. In fact, store right now, and people have been knocking this whole time, even though we're closed. So people want to be out and about. And I do think really when you even tie into the younger generation who didn't really know what the shopping was like, I would say even like 10 years ago, it's going to be something so novel and cool in the future, the way that stores interact. And the fact that if we think about warehousing this way, shopping in stores will be fun again. It will be nice again because you can actually leave with the product you came for. One of the biggest challenges was that the systems weren't ready to use all that inventory in store to ship digitally. So they put less and less of it in there. So you'd go in and you'd love that blue shirt, but you couldn't even get it. Now, I think we're going to start seeing that revert, especially for stores in our scale, right? And boutiques and niche categories in our scale like this. And that interaction is evolving. I think the way that people think after a year like this, the social interactions have automatically changed, and we're very intimate. We have bra fittings. People come in. They, it's almost like going to the doctor, right? You actually have to get all the way down into your skin and have this interaction, talk about your body and talk about, the issues. It's very emotional. To get back to that, once people do, you get sucked right back into that moment, right? And people are going to look for it more and more. And we see that already happening. The return customers that are already happening in our stores, there's that frequency, right? There's that desire to be back. So we believe in stores. We believe in brick and mortar with the right purpose and the right use of that money sitting on shelves. And if you can build the right efficiencies, they're great billboards. In fact, they're better than billboards because they are a showroom and experience. And with the changes that are happening even in commercial real estate now, they're cheaper than billboards. So that if you can man it and if you can make it happen, that's what we want to try to accomplish. Just to create these safe, beautiful environments, which is our purpose, and then be able to serve you at home if that's what you choose. So technology will definitely help us get there. I think we've got a really good foundation and base, which is, we feel fortunate for that, but we want to stretch it even more. So.
Yeah. And now that you've said it, I think it's very interesting. I was one of those, I like to shop in a store, and, the past few years, like, I never went into a store. Like, let me get it shipped to me. And I think you're right. This pandemic is going to alter our minds again. Like, no, I want to be around people. I want to be in stores. Like we're going to have that need to like be around and want those experiences again. So I think that's a great call out. Craig, NetSuite, what's next for you guys? What's on your radar?
Yeah, sure. I just want to make one comment about being in stores. I cannot wait to get back in stores. Now, I have a retail store background, so there's a professional interest. But as a shopper, particularly for apparel, so clothing is a unique, commodity in that it has to fit the body, as Guido was talking about. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I've had my challenges with e-commerce orders and getting the right fit if I'm not really familiar with the brand. So when I'm out looking for new pair of shoes and it's something I haven't tried on before, it's a bit of a gamble because, as we all know, size 11 for one company is different for size 11 from another company. So it is one of the challenges of apparel. You know, a TV is a TV. If I've seen one, I've seen them all. But clothing has a huge need for touch, feel, try it on, see how I look. That is not going away anytime soon. So we see nothing but rosy propositions for retail in general, and particularly for retail around apparel, of course, which is my area of interest. So we're expecting that to bounce back robustly. That's not to say that all locations are going to come back. Many brands have realized that, hey, we're not seeing a return on the square foot that we're paying in these locations. Now is a perfect time to, if you haven't already shut those down, to if it's not making money for you now, there's no reason to think that it's going to magically start making money for you 6 months from now. So many brands have closed those less than profitable locations and then now double down on finding new locations with which to replicate their more successful business models. From NetSuite's perspective, we're going to continue to do what our core business model is, which is to have an adaptable, cutting-edge, cloud-based ERP platform. So what does that mean? Well, we've released 2 upgrades to our offering each year, every year, and it's available and gets applied to all 24,000+ of our customers at the same time. What this means is that every single NetSuite user in the universe, if you want to think about it that way, is all running on the same release of the software. So we don't have to spend a lot of time as a company thinking about what we did 5 years ago. We're a very forward-looking company. So we're looking 3 to 5 years out. What are the new technologies that are going to be used by businesses, and beginning the effort to incorporate those technologies in our platform. So as we roll forward with those 2 upgrades a year, every year, we're keeping our customers on the cutting edge of technology. We're managing all the IT infrastructure. We're managing the upgrades. They don't have to think about that. They still need to test the new features. They still need to make sure that the core system is solving all of their business problems and the new problems that they bring to NetSuite to solve for. But at the same time, we're not having to get isolated on a platform that's 10 or 15 years old. All the programmers who created it have retired, and there's literally nothing we can do about changing it. So our core business model is to stay current, enable our customers to thrive, and frankly, from NetSuite's perspective, to get, I'll be blunt here, to get ever increasing slice of the technology pie that any given business will run. So this means, as we've done in the last few years, adding HR and payroll as solid offerings, et cetera, et cetera. We're only going to continue to replicate on that kind of success.
Okay, that's awesome to hear. And I think from a Fit4Commerce perspective, we are seeing, similar to what Guido had mentioned, the need of really experienced, resources to help around these journeys. That's what Fit4Commerce is seeing as well. And kind of what we're looking towards in the future is, we're seeing a lot of technology assessments, just, hey, look at my ecosystem. What do I have the right things to help me scale and be that nimble, that quick pivots, assessments and RFPs for technology and platforms. We're seeing a lot of that. We're also seeing a lot of just, people asking for help around marketing. Like, how do I reach my customers, as we are evolving. So that's a lot of the things that we're seeing right now, which is, it feels very much aligned with what your guys' experience and what your organizations are also focused on. All right. Well, we have about 5 minutes, I think. We do have some questions. I'm going to pop over. I don't know that we'll get to all of them, but we'll tackle as many as we can. So Guido, from your perspective, there's definitely some interest around your guys' experience turning physical stores into fulfillment centers. Were there, certain ahas that you guys encountered, or, what adjustments did you have to make that magic happen?
The aha was that the technology was there. The adjustment was the manpower for it. So in order to accomplish that, you have to either decide you're going to ship those locations, or you're going to create a system of transfer orders to bring those to where you're going to ship from. And that was a new procedure that we had to implement. Fortunately, we have transfer order procedures, because if you run multiple door operations, you're taking from a warehouse and filling in all the time. You're replenishing these stores, returning sale items, things like that. So we had a system in place. We just had to shift it from being a simple warehouse process to being an actual customer service process. So it just became a daily pull and a daily tie-in. So, I think, I think you get creative, but solutions are always there as long as you have that technology to audit you and stay behind you. We've definitely also been able to keep running inventory in check. I have to say that we know how our inventory in our stores are doing because of whether or not we have out of stock issues or things like that happening with each of these tickets. We really can capture, what we're thinking we have and what we don't, and where there might be problem categories or problem items. And we've been able to identify those. So our inventory play has been really consistent also. And that's just a byproduct.
That's so awesome to hear. I love that IT was not the hindrance, because it seems like inevitably IT is always the ones like, we got to figure this out. So I love that in this scenario, IT was not the hindrance. It was actually, let's figure out the processes. That's great. Were you, Guido, just to continue on that, another question, did you evaluate other platforms before kind of continuing your relationship with NetSuite, or was NetSuite just hitting all of the things you needed? It was a no-brainer.
So I've worked with other platforms. I'm still working with other platforms in our other businesses. And, one business actually has 2 platforms. So try to put that one together. And so I understand where the cross benefits are for what, NetSuite has brought us and how we've been able to continue to evolve quickly. The dashboards, the way my team can report, really even the customer service on the NetSuite side. I mean, it's hard. Craig was mentioning about, how everyone's on the same update, right? So when you're trying to do that with a couple systems where, each of these updates weren't integrated, man, it's hard. It's hard right now. We already have shortage of talent, like we spoke about. Try to get people who can chase back to the servicing that you need. So it's been pretty fluid. And I will tell you again, I put my head in my hands because I had underestimated the IT side, the tech side of the acquisition. And fortunately, we had a really good foundation.
Okay, that's awesome to hear. And Craig, going over to you really quick, what is your mind is kind of the top items retailers should prioritize or keep in mind if they are changing systems? Let's say they just do decide they're not on Unified today, we need to go to Unified. What are some, just key things you can help people to, keep top of mind?
So we were again. Oh, Craig, is this for Craig? Sorry.
Yeah, let's let Craig take this one first.
Go for Craig. Sorry.
Yeah, not a problem. One of the things that I think might be surprising to businesses that haven't started to make the switch is it's not all about features and functions. So if you sort of divide up the criteria by which a selection for moving to a new platform should be, the feature function in the technology stack is incredibly important, but it's not the only thing I would suggest that you need to be thinking about. You need to be thinking about the company itself that you're buying from. Are they going to be around in 3 to 5 years, 5 to 10 years, 15, 20 years? Did they have a track record of doing that? So the company itself and the backing and the money behind that company that can drive new features and functions going forward, incredibly important. Obviously, having a system that is affordable and that can scale and grow. One thing I'll point out is, particularly with NetSuite, is it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. We have starter solutions, we have lower mid-market, we have mid-market, we have corporate versions, all the same software, just configured differently and at different price points. So it's not like you have to do that $10 million spend that I talked about, the targets of the world are having to do. So it's the pricing, it's the company, it's the functions and features, it's the delivery model and the support model that you get from that company. How are they going to help me implement? Do they have leading practices that I can leverage so I don't have to reinvent all my workflows? And I don't want to start from scratch. I want to leverage the experience that has been learned from all the other businesses that my provider has worked with and bring that expertise to me, and so that I can leverage it too. And so that's part of it as well. So when you look at all of those components together, you really have to evaluate any big technology spend in not just the context of the features and functions. And I'm a product guy, so I can get deep on that stuff and almost I don't anymore, but you can almost lose sight of those other things that are incredibly important. I could buy some really cool super sports car, but the manufacturer, it's a one-off and it's on the other side of the world. And what happens when I need a spark plug, right? You don't want that solution running your business, trust me, unless you just like to spend money for no particular reason. What you want is that business platform, the company and the technology that they provide, as well as their expertise, that can drive right through the center of the sweet spot of the curve. I want to be in that, right in the middle of that 80-20 curve, and I want to operate there. And I want to leverage all those leading practices that have been gained from the success of other businesses. And I think that's really something that I would encourage anyone considering to change to keep in mind those other aspects.
Awesome. Well, Guido, Craig, thank you guys so much for your time today, and everyone that participated and listened in. Thanks for spending your hour with us. We appreciate it. Hope everyone has a great afternoon.